Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back. You've run from it, dread it. It arrives all the same. It's part 8 of my complete run of the Avengers. Today we're going to be showing the Rob Liefeld era. So there's some interesting stuff about this era for those of you who haven't read it or those of you who have blissfully blanked it out of your mind like I have. It's actually kind of interesting. So this will be a shorter video because it's only 13 issues. Quick recap for those who are, again, who have blanked it out of your mind or are young or whatever. Avengers ended issue 402 because Marvel was going bankrupt and they just had no idea what they were doing anymore. And so basically to save the company, I guess, they basically had the Onslaught storyline where the Fantastic Four and the Avengers were all killed. And then, spoiler alert, they're all brought back to life in an alternate universe that's actually like inside the mind of Franklin Richards. He basically preserves all of their life forces inside his mind and creates a whole alternate universe for them to live in. The Heroes Reborn universe, or something like that. What do they call it? Heroes Reborn is when they come back, right? So it's Heroes, whatever. It doesn't matter. Minutia. And so what they did was Marvel basically farmed out the titles to Image. So they had Jim Lee taking over a couple of them, and then Rob Liefeld taking over a couple of them. Jim Lee, his side of things got Fantastic Four and Iron Man, and Rob Liefeld got Captain America, which he totally destroyed, and Avengers, which he also destroyed, but in a different way, in a way that you may have forgotten. So why don't we go into it here? First of all, there are multiple covers for Rob Liefeld's Avengers #1. This is not the one that most people have. There's a Rob Liefeld cover of Thor looking like he has 700 teeth and he's incredibly constipated, being here, and like the other like main Avengers, and it's just sort of a classic Liefeld. Everyone's standing around, looking emaciated, but huge at the same time. You know, there's like the skin's pulled so tight over their skull that you can see all their bones. Anyway, that's not this cover. This is a totally different cover. Frankly, it's a cover that I forgot existed. It's not by Rob Liefeld either, even though it kind of looks like it. Because, and here's the thing that I think I had forgotten, and most people have probably forgotten, Liefeld doesn't actually draw most of this series. In fact, he draws 20 pages out of this double-sized issue. The other 20 are drawn by Chap Yep, and he is actually the artist at the start of the series. Rob Liefeld is plotting. He's co-plotting. So he gets top billing here, Rob Liefeld, and he does draw 20 pages in the first issue and the other cover. But actually, Jim Valentino is the co-plotter and the scripter, and Chap Yep is doing the artwork. I think it would be very reasonable to ask, what exactly is Rob Liefeld doing? I mean, there's certain things, they have a different version of Hellcat, who's actually more like Tigra, and then they have like a different version of Swordsman, who doesn't make any sense, and I don't think is ever explained. A completely different character just called a Swordsman. Blah blah blah. So I guess Rob Liefeld he credits himself as the editor as well. So I guess he's just sort of the high level guy, just saying like, imagine if Stan Lee were Rob Liefeld. That's what this is, because this creative team changes a bunch of times. So here's issue 2. Again, the cover is not by Liefeld. You can tell, even though the line work on the face looks Liefeldian with all the teeth and again the grimacing and the like someone's pulling their skin real hard from the back. You can tell looking at Kang's face how much better that's rendered than any face Rob Liefeld has ever drawn. That this was not done by Rob Liefeld. Again, Liefeld co-plotting with Jim Valentino chappy up on art, right? And that stays here for a while, but again, forget the line work looking a little Liefeldian. The actual art is just much better than he's able to do, as we see here with issue 4, because he actually does the cover for issue 4, and it blows. So Avengers number 4. If you wanted to know what Liefeld Hulk looks like, it blows. And we start to get a mix up in the creative team. Issue 5, Ian Churchill comes on as the artist. We get probably the least remembered Thor versus Hulk fight is in this Avengers 5. Issue 6, Heroes Reborn. I guess I got that right. Heroes Reborn. I forgot there was a crossover with the different titles. It's called Industrial Revolution. Apparently, this has got Iron Man, who's in the Avengers, of course, but you can see it's got the thing from Fantastic Four in it. Some kind of big crossover. There's Human Torch. This is issue 6. Issue 7, again, Liefeldian in terms of... Okay, sorry, I got interrupted. I don't remember where we were, but it was talking about this ridiculous proportions on Enchantress, which are very Liefeldian, because one of the things he drew in issue 1 is an absolutely ridiculous drawing of her, where her legs are 13 feet tall, and then the rest of her body is like 1.5 feet. But again, the art is much better than Liefeld's art, even when they're trying to do it as Liefeldian. This is clearly the Masters of Evil as well, which I appreciate. But this is the last issue with Rob Liefeld involved. So just to recap, I mean, I think everyone kind of thinks of the Heroes Reborn Avengers as being a disaster, which it mostly was, but also being a Rob Liefeld disaster. And that's actually much more true of Captain America, because Rob Liefeld's contributions to this are, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because it sounds insane, is that he was the idea man. But in actuality, he drew covers for issue 1 and 4. He drew half of issue 1, and the rest of the 7 issues on, he only co-plotted. So Jim Valentino, after the first couple issues left, and Jeff Loeb took over as the actual writer. So he's co-plotting and scripting. And say what you will about Jeff Loeb, he's a lot better writer than Rob Liefeld. And then we get a whole new creative team with issue 8, and it's actually a pretty good creative team because Walt Simonson takes over as writer. I'm going to open this one to show you. And then, so Walt Simonson takes over as writer, and the artist is Michael Ryan, right? So here's the cover. First of all, it's a Jim Lee cover. So if you ever wondered what the Avengers by Jim Lee would look like, he actually did the big 3 Avengers. It's just they're wearing their Heroes Reborn costumes. But Walt Simonson on the writing, and then the artwork, again, is by Michael Ryan. And let me show you his artwork here. That's this version of Kang. But you can see that, you know, yes, it's sort of 90s in terms of various things about the artwork. But if you actually look at the artwork there and the lettering, it's not bad, actually. It's not bad. So it's weird because halfway through this run, we get actually a pretty good creative team. Now, I haven't read these since they came out. I read them all at the time. I was such a hardcore Avengers fan that I actually kept reading. And to be fair, this run here came directly after arguably the worst run of all time until Bendis took over. But the issues from 376 to 400 were a disaster. And then the end of that culminating in The Crossing, which is a notorious fiasco. So this actually... strangely, like, it's not that bad again, I haven't read it since then, but I remember reading these Walt Simonson issues and thinking, you know, these aren't that bad. Now, I'm a big fan of Walt Simonson. I wasn't a big fan of his run of Avengers, which infamously he took over the run in the basically, and he wrote the story to blow up the Avengers so he could then create his new team, and brought the new team together in issue 300 and immediately left the book because of editorial interference. So we never actually saw what he was even planning on doing unless you go over and read his Fantastic Four run after that, where it was all about Kang, because that stuff was supposed to be in Avengers. So having said that, here we are with issue 9. And then 10, we get this new design that looks like an old school cover design. And again, like, it's not that bad. Like, the art, if you look at the art on this compared to sort of the Liefeld influence stuff, there's much less of that here. Issue 11. Issue 12, Heroes Reunited. I think this is part of, I think this is Galactus's arm. I think you're supposed to get all the issues and put them together to make one big image. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. Issue 12. And then the last issue, I think actually might be the same thing. It might be another thing where you're supposed to get the other ones. Or it looks like there's a gatefold here, but I'm not taking it out. So this is the last issue. And then they had the Heroes Return, where this universe disappeared, and the Avengers and the Fantastic Four were brought back, initially with no explanation at all, and then eventually they had the explanation. And then eventually they did bring over some of the characters from this universe into the regular Marvel universe. But there it is, the 13 infamous issues of the Rob Liefeld run, where bizarrely they decided to bring in Rob Liefeld for his high-level ideas, not his artwork, which, say what you will, is popular, right? They basically were like, let's take the absolute least popular thing about Rob Liefeld and make that the only thing that he does on Avengers. We're not even going to have him draw it. And then they bring in completely different creative teams that he just oversees. And so it ends up being a mishmash of like a bunch of creators who are a lot better than Rob Liefeld. The story is not that great. And it's strange that in the 13 issues here, again, when you get to issue 8, I think, is when Simonson takes over. But in issue 7, from issues 7 to 13, there are 3 different event crossovers. Issues 7, 12, and 13 are all part of different event crossovers. So that's got to be a record. The universe only lasted for 13 issues, and in the space of half of that run, they did 3 universe-wide crossovers. And of course, I don't have those. I have the Captain America issues, but I did not buy Fantastic Four or Iron Man, so I have no idea what happened in the other half of these things. I certainly didn't care enough reading these to actually buy the other parts of the story. I was basically just buying these because I was a completist. I had a complete run of Avengers, and I didn't want that to end, so I was buying them for the numbers and the logo. But again, the Simonson part at the end actually was pretty competent, because it had competent creators on it, so there's like a certain level of craft that they're going to have. But that ended, and then of course, when this ended, then the Heroes Return came in, and it was George Perez on art. And they offered the book to George Perez, and he said he would do it, but he wanted Kurt Busiek as the writer. So Kurt Busiek, George Perez, Avengers run immediately follows this. And so that's what we'll be showing next time. So when I get next time, there's going to be other videos in between, but next time I get back to my complete run of Avengers, we'll be showing the first part of the Kurt Busiek, George Perez run. But for now, let me know what you think of this Rob Liefeld era, the Heroes Reborn era. If you have any thoughts on it, other than just pretending it never happened. I'll be really curious to see what you think, and I'll see you next time.